Welcome to We the World and our 2025 MLK Manifesting the Dream event. Each year, we take time to remember Martin Luther King Jr. and his beloved community. And each year, we are thrilled to feature the many people and organizations who have taken action to be of service, not only in January and February, but all year round. We at We the World welcome you to take action and be of service at we.net/MLK from January 15th to February 28th. Please join us in being a part of this annual celebration and consider being of service in your communities and with us. Of course, donations are very appreciated at we.net/donate. My name is Jana Larson, and I am the HR Deputy Director of We the World. And today we have three fabulous, strong women as our guests. Shannon CrossBear is a knowledge keeper at Strongheart Resource Development, committed to promoting gentle healing rooted in personal and community history. Her leadership stems from addressing systemic disparities in mental health, child welfare, and family well being. Shannon has facilitated and consulted for organizations including the National Indian Child Welfare Association, Georgetown University, and the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. She integrates traditional and trauma informed practices to support tribal and non tribal communities. With experience across the US, Alaska, and Canada, she has implemented systemic changes to enhance child and family well being by focusing on early childhood development, parenting programs, and behavioral health initiatives. As a skilled facilitator of trauma informed community engagement, Shannon champions sustainable, culturally grounded healing solutions. In addition, she is a longtime member of the We the World team, and we are grateful for her contribution to our team. Veronica Willeto DeCrane of the Navajo peoples and the Many Hogans clan was raised in New Mexico and currently resides in Billings, Montana, land originally belonging to the Crow, Blackfeet, Northern Cheyenne, and Sioux nations. She holds a bachelor's in race and ethnic studies and history, a master's in curriculum and instruction, focusing on integrative Indigenous education, and she is pursuing a PhD in educational leadership. With over 14 years of experience, Veronica has been a steadfast advocate for Indigenous youth, specializing in Indian education, youth development, and trauma recovery. As the Tribal Programs Coordinator for Friends of the Children, she connects Indigenous youth with professional mentors. Veronica serves on multiple boards, including the National Child Traumatic Stress Network Steering Committee, supporting trauma informed care. Rooted in ancestral teachings, her work is guided by integrity, humility, and compassion, with a mission to uplift Indigenous communities and foster resilience. And we have Teresa Brewington, who holds an MBA and a master's in education. And she's a passionate leader and advocate in mental health and education. She serves as a network liaison with the National Center for Child Traumatic Stress, focusing on the mental health needs of Indigenous youth. Her background includes significant roles at the University of Iowa, where her leadership is instrumental in creating culturally competent care initiatives. As an old enrolled member of the Kohari tribe and a Lumbee descendant, Teresa's work is deeply rooted in her cultural heritage. She has held various leadership roles, including foster care director, school counselor for Hispanic and Latino students, and elementary school principal for Native children in the Meskwaki settlement in Iowa. Her approach emphasizes holistic well being, cultural identity, and comprehensive culturally informed care. She is recognized for her dedication to marginalized communities, fostering empowerment, hope, and positive change. We welcome you all, and I hand the talking feather to you, Shannon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Chimi Gwetch. Anin Indaway Maganak, Minagijikan Wabagonis, Gichi Oningaming Nongum, just telling you that I'm greeting you in Ojibwe Moen, the Ojibwe language, saying good morning, and that I'm coming from Lake Superior here, Gichi Oningaming. I wanted to just welcome you to our conversation today, but this is really just an opportunity for myself and two of my very close relatives that are in the work trying to make this a better place for our future generations. And but the way that we generally start something, any conversation, anytime we're going to be talking about such important things and we're coming together, we always start with what I call the words that come before all others, right? We start with that. Some people call it prayer, some people call it intention, some people call it grounding, but we really want to be present for this conversation for ourselves and for those that may be watching this at a later date, right? So we would do that in our various ways. We would prepare ourselves for a conversation, and especially a conversation that is important and has consequence because we care about, right? So when I think about that, I just want us to take a moment and in whatever way works to just think about we're coming together. It's Martin Luther King, month that we're celebrating and trying to, I don't know if celebrating is the right word, but emulate lives of service, understanding that our fellow human beings, that we're in this together, and that the only thing that will help us is to do it together, right? It is we. It's not an I society, it's a we society. And it's even embedded in the language, right? Of how we see the world in our indigenous languages. So those are my words. I'm just, welcome Veronica, welcome Teresa. I'm so glad to just be able to talk with you. There's a lot going on right now, right? A whole lot. And I'm doing some work right now around decolonization, really deep kind of change about decolonization and what it takes to do that. And thinking a lot about that because we seem to have taken on that. We go 2-3 steps forward and seems like we go 2 steps backwards, and we've all suffered from colonization but our experience as Indigenous people is more recent, right? So I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about? Teresa, I know you came with some things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, anything is great with me, guys. I think that in honor of Martin Luther King, I do think that we should kind of honor him and what he means by his vision of the beloved community, and maybe tie that into deconstruction of decolonization for Indigenous peoples and all BIPOC people is what I would love for us to kind of start off with if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Veronica?
Yeah, I think that would be good to begin with. I kind of want to speak to some of the things that are happening on I guess you would say, that are impacting people most recently, and the how it's going to be affecting their lives, and just kind of speak to what we can do, because I think there can tend to be a sense of hopelessness when there's so many things happening that feel like they're out of our control. And so just want to talk about, what we can do as a community together, to kind of support one another through difficulties and hardships that we know we're up against.
Love
Yeah, Veronica, when you were saying that, I'm going to tell you what popped into my head was that I had the conversation with my son, who is much more, in fact, when he was in San Diego and went down to Mexico, he had a hard time because he lost his ID, and they did not believe that he wasn't Hispanic, and they didn't believe that he wasn't from Mexico, and and so my kids and my grandkids, now it's going to be important for them to have that identification because of the ICE raids and because of their, so that racism is so deep that we're really, and we have to prepare our communities for that, for misidentification and having to carry their identification and all of that. So it is we just have, like you said, that's one thing we have to be prepared for, and other things as well. So
I want to say to that, Shannon, it does seem like we're going back in time instead of moving forward. I agree with Veronica. I think this is an important conversation that we all need to have. There's going to be a lot of changings that are going to be coming that are going to be hurting all peoples of color. And I think that a great conversation is how we could come together as a community, as we could use our sovereignty instead of speaking our sovereignty. Let's really put sovereignty in action. Is something that has been really resonating me a lot lately with what is coming down. And really just talk about how we could utilize our community, our loved ones, and our sovereignty in that way to get through this and to continue moving forward, regardless of what is going on.
yeah, and I think, Veronica, I was thinking about you and the work that you're doing with, helping to elevate those voices and friends of the children. Like, really, we need to be friends of the children. Like this whole thing, and the kind of the positive. I have to find those pockets of really positive, hopeful kinds of things, um, and one of them is, both of you know that I have great grandchildren now, and that my great granddaughter, she's and great grandson have heard the language since they were in the womb, and they will be a generation of first language speakers. Now, in and of that South, oh, that's a great thing, but what's that got to do with anything else? Well, because the way we think is embedded in our languages. You know that, Veronica, you know that, Teresa. And it's so when they speak and that they think that way, and that means that we're at a point of really full realization of our way of being again, right? And I think that is of extreme value, not just to ourselves, as individual nations, but to the world at large. So there's, I think we have, that's that role that we get taught about. And when I look around, I was thinking about, our strong Indigenous women, and I kind of like just closed my eyes for a minute, and I just saw all these faces, right? And all these names, and you've known them too, right? That what we see out here doing this work, infusing the voices, representing, making things better, talking about things like welcoming in the womb and, how we need to give our ceremonies to our young women and our young men, and, language and all of those things. And we get to see that, and I guess maybe because, I've just been around for a little while, but what happens is that I have enough time on the earth walk now, that I look and I feel good, because I know that the things that we were talking about when I was a young woman in the 70s are happening. Like the American Indian movement, it really did. It really was. And it was all about sovereignty. So anyway.
Yeah, there's so many things happening that's encouraging lately, like, I guess the pending release of Leonard Peltier, I think, was really good news to hear. I also heard, I don't know, Teresa, if you can confirm this, but the path to federal recognition for the Lumbee
Yeah.
In Oklahoma has begun, or the door has been opened for that. And so that was really good news to hear. I know that in my home state of New Mexico, we're celebrating, Deb Haaland. And she finished her tenure with the Biden administration, and just all of the work that she was able to do. Talk about like a strong Indigenous woman.
Wow.
She was a single mother, and she was a community organizer, and she just represented us very well. And all the work that was done around the, helping us as a nation confront our history.
Yeah.
And of just the forced removal of children and placing them in basically, prison settings, for them to be labor and for them to be abused, and to kind of rip their identity away from them. So all of that. And it was like a long journey of just hearing the stories of survivors, those who survived that, and then even all of the repatriation of children from those schools to their homelands, who had died in those schools, to their homelands. I think all of that, there's just so many things happening that's really kind of bringing healing to our communities, and that's helping people understand, the origins of our nation, and coming to terms with that. And so I think all of those things are really important for us to recognize, even as we're confronted with ongoing ongoing legacies of colonization and ongoing efforts to continue to colonize. I heard about the Mount Denali, and this current administration wanting to change the name from that Indigenous name that honors and the Indigenous people there, to a name that honors a former president, I believe. And so there's even like renaming the Gulf of Mexico, definitely have been hearing about the ICE raids, and even my tribe and some of the Apache and Pueblo tribes have been are going to be providing hours tomorrow in the urban centers to be able to allow people to get documentation. I'm really concerned about like our relatives on the streets who may not have a lot of that documentation. And then I'm concerned about like our children who may not be enrolled and may not be able to prove that type of documentation. But hopefully, you know, to tribal citizenship, but also, you know, yeah, just kind of thinking about how, you know, you never, I guess I personally never thought about how important that documentation was for us. But, you know, and even just the, you know, the conversation around our citizenship, you know, as tribal people continuing, you know, all that's happening around birthright citizenship right now. And, you know, what does that mean for us as tribal people? So all of that is just kind of like happening all together. So there's things to celebrate. There's things that our people are doing in the face of all of this, you know, attempts to, you know, marginalize us and attempts to take away our human rights, but we're still working towards, you know, together towards the well-being of our people, and we're still fighting for them. So I think that's really beautiful to see that happening. And that brings a lot of hope for me. I don't know what you guys think about. Yeah, I named so many different things.
Yeah, you did, Veronica. You did. Yeah. I was like, wow, you just like the way to educate. I mean, because there is so much. Like even with the citizenship, you know, so many people don't know that we didn't even have citizenship as U.S. citizens until the 1920s, right? And so, um, and it's always a little balance for me as a citizen of one nation to have that dual citizenship, right? Because my, you know, like I would say my first citizenship is my Ojibwe citizenship, right? So, and what does that mean in a changing time? That's really, and then what I thought about too, and I was celebrating the Lumbee admission into, you know, federal recognition at the same time, but it was at the same time that this citizenship, birthright citizenship came up. So there's, you know, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm aware that you have to be very vigilant, even in things that appear to be moving us forward, right? So when I think about Leonard Peltier's release, you know, that we all celebrate it because we want Leonard to be home with his family. He's 80 years old. He's not well. He's been a political prisoner for 50 years. And,
Yeah.
you know, he needs to go home. Into the world, it looks like, wow, what a great thing that was finally, right? And yet there was no pardon.
Mhm.
And
He's
that's
still considered a prisoner. He's just released in to home imprisonment. And yes, he gets to be with his family and stuff. But let's not forget that he was imprisoned because he exerted sovereignty and he failed to recognize any, and he embarrassed the FBI. And
absolutely.
let's not forget that we have had X amount of administrations that had an opportunity to make that right and really do that. And for a man who has been imprisoned longer than Mandela, or, you know, Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. And he has suffered as a result of that. And And I think, regardless of how long he has on this earth walk, that we collectively as Indigenous people on this continent need to continue the fight to have him pardoned. to really make that right, to hold the right people accountable for what happened, so.
I appreciate President Biden for sending him home. But as we all know, he was very sick.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that he is now able to go home.
Me too.
Family members. So I'll take that as a win, but I do agree, Shannon, that yes, he deserves a full pardon. Absolutely 100%. I do want to comment on the Lumbee thing. President Trump has not come out and said that the Lumbee tribe is federally recognized. Lumbee tribes have been working on federal recognition since before I was born.
Yeah.
Been denied and denied to the House over and over and over again. So I'm going to take this as a step forward, his recognition of this and his support for it. However, I'm not going to celebrate until I know that my peoples have the full recognition that they have deserved for so long. For since before I was born, the federal government recognized the Lumbees as an Indian tribe without full recognition. A lot of that has to do with what? Money, right? We have a lot of tribal members, over 55,000, which is very significant. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that he said that, but I'm waiting to hear that the Lumbees now have full federal recognition. And then I will check.
Yeah. Right. And because this is the whole, deal, is that not one treaty has been adhered to. It's a treaty issue. We made a treaty. We have kept our end of the treaty.
Yep.
It hasn't happened the other way. And now it, and it has been for a long time, it's, and the continuation of the resources, like stealing the resources, killing the earth, poisoning the waters. This
Not believing in climate change.
not,
We're witnessing climate change every single day.
so it just, and if I could kind of step back, that's all my hurt, speaking. And if I step back a little bit, then I look at it and I say, and what can we do? How do we hold space for for this tremendous healing that needs to happen, right? And even in this conversation, I'm like, it's a sad state of affairs that I'm sitting here saying, oh yeah, they did a good thing, but don't trust them. And that's what we, that I was and I think that's what we collectively, whether it's here or whether we meet up at some conference or whether we're, out there in the world working together, whatever we're doing, when we find each other, we have that.
Mhm.
We have that, and that's that knowing, that understanding, that and that solidarity that you talked about, Teresa, and I'm trying to figure out how then do we how do we include the world in that, so that the first thing that people don't think is that idea of mistrust.
Absolutely. And we have a reason for mistrust, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and sometimes, I guess, I think, how do we not be a prisoner of our past?
Hmm.
Because as long as we're a prisoner of our past, it's hard to step into the future.
However, Shannon, these things that are in the past, they're also current.
Yeah, right. We're not talking about,
Yeah.
look what's happening. I mean, the extraction, the lives, where is that happening? Where are those things happening? When they couldn't go through a state, they decided to go through tribal lands because they thought they had the right to them. Still,
Yep.
where treaty defined our nations and have been, anyway. So I mean, and they're in the courts. And so, we, I think, collectively have jumped into trying to compete in that colonized world and trying to do that in a colonized world. And it hasn't worked out well. I mean, so I mean, I think what Veronica was saying about, you know, um, Deb being, the work that she did, it was amazing, amazing what she accomplished while she was in that administration. Amazing things, right? For the first time, we had some recognition and an actual report on the missing and murdered Indigenous women of this continent, this nation. Canada had done that before, but you know,
And then that agreed, Shannon, I think we can celebrate all of the things that has been done.
Yeah.
We have come a long way. We truly have. But we have so much more to do to continue on that path. But I will say that we do have American Indian scholars. We have American
Oh,
Indian doctors. We have them in our government. So we have people like you and Veronica speaking out and doing these teachings and telling people and teaching our young generation. So we are making strides to a better place for our children. And that is my ultimate goal, is that we continue on that. Because it's not about you. We're older now. It is about our children.
yeah, and and we got some good looking children among us. Veronica, I was thinking about your little ones there. They're just like, they make me smile. My little ones make me smile. I mean, I know Teresa's little one makes her smile. That just they're the lights. They're what we do this for, right?
Absolutely.
And our teachers. We have a teaching about that soft spot. I don't know if you guys have that teaching, but there we have a teaching about that soft spot, and that as long as that soft spot is still there, that's when they're really at risk of. I mean, in a Western world, they're still at risk for things like a sudden infant death and things like that, right? But from a traditional teaching perspective, it was always said to me that that was the time that they were really making a decision whether they were going to stay. Because as long as that soft spot was open, they're still part of the spirit world. And then when that closes up, they forget. And then we have to spend our time. It's not as the rest of our life trying to reconnect. But anyway, I think it's that's a really good teaching to think about, with our children. Just and all of our traditions always spoke about our children as being sacred, right? Sacred. They call them the sacred beings. It was like,
Absolutely.
so if we're not doing well by those sacred beings, people that I mean, there are human beings that, think in a way where they only think about, the immediate or the present, but not that what that is for those ones that are coming. So
I'd also say, Shannon and Veronica, for me personally, that is where my healing comes from. It comes from our traditions and our cultures. It doesn't come from the Western society. It comes from what I know as being American Indian and what I've been taught about my history from my relatives. That is where I go to get my to even anytime I feel down or feel lonely or feel depressed, I dip down back into my culture and my traditions, and that's where I get my energy from. That's how I do what I do. I feel like it's in my soul, it's in my guts. It's my ancestors talking to me every day to keep doing this, to keep moving forward despite all the obstacles that we're going through. I think it's really important that people know that for Indigenous people especially, we hold on to our cultural values. For many reasons. And that's why we're here. That's why we'll still be here. And that's truly what is getting us through all of this. And we'll continue to do so. And when we talk about decolonization, I have relatives that have, kind of moved away from their cultural traditions. And and if they're in a bad way, I always say, and I talk to them, I'm like, come back to this, learn your history, learn your culture, learn your language. I'm in my early 50s. I'm just now learning my language. That's one thing I regret. I wish I would have known that when I was younger. I wish that I had spoken fluently, and my goal is to be able to speak it fluently. But I think for our peoples, knowing our traditions and really leaning into our customs and ways of being, it is really where we get our health from. This is how we take care of ourselves, and this is how we are able to take care of our communities and our families and our loved ones and our children. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
And it's ironic to me, even though all three of us are from three different nations, our similarities with our beliefs are so similar, but also so different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and I think that, I mean, so think even that of this is a demonstration. And I find it, because we are from so many different tribes, when we're out there working, we find people from other tribes or whatever. And and there's lots of respect. There's differences, like you said, but there's respect, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. Like that's that self-sovereignty, that sovereignty of, of course I'm going to respect. And do we share? Of course we share. Of course we share. I mean, we share songs, we share ceremonies, we've shared we've shared things across our nations, right? Medicines that are particularly helpful. We've shared those things. Or like where I'm at, there's no sage. There's no sage where I'm at. There's sweetgrass. So I'm trading sweetgrass, right? And but there's all those things even within our medicines that we share and exchange. And to me, it's like the forest that is outside of my, window here. It's like that's what makes a healthy, diverse, and strong forest is the diversity, right? The different kind. Like if you have a forest that's all birch trees, it's yeah, it's not going to survive, and it's not going to be strong, right? But if you have that with birch and pine and tamarack and, then that they help each other. And that's the other thing that I think I'm really happy about is not only are we in all the places that you talked about, Teresa and Veronica, whether it be in Congress or on boardrooms or, whatever, but we're not sitting there quiet. And it takes a lot of, I mean, especially as because we're still not, we're a smaller percentage, and and we've all been raised not to interrupt and, to be polite and to give other people space and all. That's the way we've been raised, and not to ask too many questions. That was a bad one for me. And that we're still doing it, and it takes a lot of bravery. And so I just want to say both to you as two women that I respect and admire for the work that you're doing, is, how glad I am. I mean, how happy it makes me every time, we're in something together, and it just is so, yeah, it makes it easier,
Yeah. I can attest to like being in boardrooms where you just know that people are not educated about Indigenous ways and perspectives, and sometimes it can feel like it's almost contrary to, the dominant societies, what it is that we're expected to fall in line with. And so I think that's can be really difficult to like be that voice to say, this is not the only way, or this is not the only perspective. Like we can look at this in a different way, and we can, we can, disagree, and we can have more, views about this, and it's okay that we do, and I think that's really where I see the power of Indigenous voices is we're not trying to overrun other people with our beliefs. Like Shannon said, we're respectful of what each of us chooses to follow, the path we choose to follow. I was on, fortunately with my role at Friends of the Children, I get to provide some learning events, and I was recently facilitating one with an elder, Lakota elder, and I was just really, touched by something that he said. And he was saying that, because we were asking, what advice would you give to friends? The friends are the name that we give to our mentors, but what advice would you give them if they were working with Indigenous youth and they were not Indigenous themselves? And one of the things that came up in our conversation with this elder, we had a couple of elders, and they just talked about how we should respect like where our youth are at, that some of our youth do see the value in their tribal traditions and their tribal belief systems, and then some of our youth have chosen other paths. And so he really talked about like respecting that about our Indigenous youth, and that like sometimes there's a reason why they're on the path that they are, and that like, we're really just concerned about like them living a good life and their well-being. And so, their spiritual and mental and physical, social well-being. So all of that, if what is guiding them to live a good life, is helpful to them, then it's important for us to respect that. And so I really appreciated that, because I think it really speaks to where we are in our right now, like as collectively as people, as like Indigenous people, where we are. There's so many different belief systems and so many different worldviews. And there was a time where we were forcing people into one worldview, that's what colonization was, right? We were forcing people to all be the same. We were, that's what imperialism was, right? And so that's kind of where I feel like now we have much more, with our, as you said, like, our Indigenous thinking. The beauty of that is that we honor people, and how they choose to walk this earth life, and we just want to be there for one another and be good relatives to one another, and to treat each other as relatives. And so I think that that's really beautiful about our way of life. And so to add that to conversations that are happening in boardrooms when we're deciding about like, what are we going to do with like millions of dollars, or what are we going to do with like this workforce, how are we going to achieve health equity? How are we going to, ensure that there's effective services for trauma impacted families? We are bringing these Indigenous ways of thinking, because we don't all think the same, right? we're so diverse with our tribal nations that we have different ways of thinking, just as diverse as our languages are. And so we're bringing these diverse perspectives into these spaces. And sometimes it's the first time that people have ever heard that way of thinking, and it makes them uncomfortable. It makes us uncomfortable sharing it because of our trust issues with people.
Exactly.
Like, we don't want to share this. What are you going to do with it? Right.
Yeah.
But like, we want to be good relatives and be to all humans around the world. We want to be contributors to the solutions that are affecting all people. Right. And so I think that I just really value that about our people, and I hope that we can set that example for our young ones, to say that, I'm not saying my way is better than your way, and I'm just going to share my perspective, because I think it honors all of us when we're able to share the different, our different perspectives and views. So I think that that's something that, working with Indigenous youth, that we should make sure to do, because we don't want to shame them for not knowing their ways. We don't want to shame them for if they choose to follow a different path. And so because we know, right, we know why, because of historical trauma, we know why our young people are, what's happening with our young people, why it's happening, right? And so we want to make sure that we come alongside them with just respecting their dignity and you know, the path that they choose to follow. And to me, that comes back to the term that we use in education called culturally sustaining and revitalizing approaches, where we honor that they're in this contemporary world where there is so many different things that they are expected to know and to learn. They're expected to know about AI. They're expected to know about all these new drugs that are coming into our communities and are affecting our communities, and they're expected to be so advanced in science, in order to address things like climate change. And so I think our young people, they're living in a world that is really really, that changes really fast, and they're trying to find an anchor. And I do believe that our culture and languages are that anchor for them, and can be an anchor for them. And some of our young ones just need access to it. They've not been given an opportunity to have access to. And so I think that that's really beautiful when they get that chance to access that. And that's something that I really enjoy supporting, as anytime that we can offer up opportunities for our young ones to connect back to their own people or their own cultural ways. But even if they can't, to connect them to just different Indigenous ways of thinking, that they can see the beauty of our Indigenous people and what we have to offer the world. It brings me back to what Shannon says about, why should we share our Indigenous thinking with others? It's because we have something valuable to contribute, right? It's not more valuable than what others in the world are contributing, but it is something valuable to contribute. And for so long, we were made to believe that we didn't, right? That what we had was not of value, and that it was wrong, and that it was, just
Backwards,
to
or
be,
or
backwards, and
backwards, or not, or yeah, or not yeah, not the sophisticated enough. I love everything that I'm like, I'm over here going, yes, 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 because it's true. And then I was thinking, because when you were talking about uh what that elder had said, and that he had said that we have to not shame, we have to support people do things, choose different things. And I kind of went back to, again, back to my traditions, and said, oh, that's why, even when we're in ceremony, sometimes when we're petitioning the spirits to help someone, we always pray for good health and happiness. That's it. That's it. Good health and happiness. How they find that is like, when I would think about, I have family members who have had issues with substance use disorders, and they have found recovery. I have family members that have, I have a few family members who have not yet. But the door is always open, and I say they don't stand a chance against my prayers. But anyway, the ones that have found lasting, sustaining recovery processes have done it in different ways. And you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I don't care where they found their sobriety sitting at a drum, or they found their sobriety in an AA room.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter if they're healthy and they're happy and they're living a good life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just what you said too. And yes, I fight all the time. That reluctance of that non-trust of, what is somebody going to do with this information? Because once you put it out there, whether it's a medicine, whether it's, I mean, I've seen it. I have a medicine that I share with people. I share it with people. I tell them how to, it's an important medicine. It's a women's medicine. But the minute I shared it in one space, there was somebody that was wanting to, because it was effective for them, they were wanting to manufacture it and and commodify it. And the minute that they did that, they were taking away from the power of that particular medicine. Like, it has to be picked in the wild. You have to do, it's the reciprocity process, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's like, full circle. So I think that Teresa, I want you to, share whatever you have to share. Let's just do kind of a little wrap up, because we're kind of at an hour, and even though I could continue to have this conversation for a long time, or if there's anything that burning that you really feel needs to be said at this point in time.
I guess I just want to say to you two ladies, I appreciate everything that you're doing. I love what you're doing for our American Indian peoples and BIPOC peoples, because when you change for one community, you're making change for the other. I think that we need to continue what we're doing, continue to use our voices. Veronica, I've resonated for what you said. A lot of times when I'm in a white space, I get very intimidated. I've been there so many times where I felt like I wasn't valued in what I had to say. When I said it, I saw the looks on their faces. And for a long time there, for many years, I stopped speaking. And eventually I ended up finding my voice again and realizing I don't really care. Either they can agree, they can listen to me, or they don't, but I'm not going to take that as a personal attack on myself. I think that's how we make change. I think we need to continue to be heard, continue to move forward, to continue to make paths, and do this for our future generations, our children. That's what we're here for. We are here to have a safe place, a beautiful earth and planet for people that are coming after us, our children and their children and their children to come. That's what makes me do what I do. It isn't about me. It's not a selfish thing. Anything that I do, it is about those that come after us. Veronica?
Teresa, if they want to learn more about the work that you're doing, I just thought about this. Is there should we direct them to the national,
You can send it to my email, teresa.brewington@duke.edu. But yeah, I've done a lot of things here and there just as consulting, and as a part of a liaison working with American Indian Alaska Native grantees. But yeah, I've done a lot with consulting, primarily for American Indians, Alaska Natives, but I've also done a lot of work with Latinx communities as well. Anything that I could do to better our people to move forward. You just have to give me a call. I'll do it. So.
thanks, Teresa. How about you, Veronica? What do you want to say to the world?
I guess just kind of bringing it back to Martin Luther King and, you know, being part of a beloved community, I think it's not easy. It's something that we work towards. And I think we fight apathy, and because there's so much that people and families and our youth are up against sometimes that it can feel overwhelming. And so it's so easy to just let our apathy overtake us and just not, you know, do what we can to keep that community healthy and strong. And so like for me, like when I'm feeling that way, I tend to retreat, right? I tend to isolate. And I think now more than ever, we really need to reach out, and we really need to have these conversations. We really need to celebrate the small wins, the small gains, and we really need to just encourage one another and be there for one another. It always reminds me of like one of the things that my dad used to say whenever like our family would come together for special occasions, you know, and we were all together eating a meal. More often than not, he would say, you know, um, he would remind us of this teaching, which was about any time that you see someone struggling, someone suffering, someone in need, someone who could use a helping hand, um, don't just watch them while they're in that place. And so, and he says this all in Navajo, so it sounds, you know, but in the English translation, it's like, don't just, you know, stand there and watch them, you know, to do something about it. And sometimes, you know, we feel like we can't, or we feel like we don't know what to do. But I think like all of us together, you know, like having conversations like this and being able to share with one another, we can find ways to support one another, you know, as we're struggling. And all of us struggle, you know, all of us struggle. So it's nothing to be ashamed of when one of us is, you know, down, um, that, and we are needing that kind of help. It's okay to need that kind of help, and it's okay to be someone that offers that help, right? And so I think that's what to me is like being a part of a community, is like allowing yourself to care for another person, to care for others, to see them and what's going on in their world, and to you know, want to come alongside them and offer whatever it is that they might need, you know, and to offer that to them. And so I think that that's to me like what it means to be a part of, you know, to show love to one another and to be a part of a beloved community. And that includes like all of this advocacy and activism and all of this fight that we're in to like for people's right to exist, people's right to be treated with dignity and humanity. And so I'm just really grateful to be a part of a community like that. And I know that there's more than us three. And I'm just super grateful that you two are in that community with me. Like when I feel alone in the boardroom, or when I feel alone and not seeing, progress in the work that I'm doing, but wanting to see that, that progress, that I can call you guys and I can talk to you guys about it, and I can like share my frustrations, and you always have words of encouragement for me. And I think that that's so important to have that, to be that for one another, to be able to have someone just call you up and for you to like listen and to empathize and to, and provide encouragement. So I'm thankful to you two for being that for me. And I just want to offer that to you too as well. And I think that that's just, when it comes down to it, in simple terms, that's just what it means to be a part of a community, to being a good relative. So that's what I'll add. In closing, pass it to
Veronica, is there some way that people could get a hold of you, or maybe learn more about the Friends?
Sure, yeah, we Friends of the Children, you can email me at Willeto, Willeto, at friendsofthechildren.org. And I'm happy to share more about the work that we do to uplift young people. We do it for all walks of life, but in my role, I'm excited to be supporting Indigenous youth and trying to ensure that they have someone in their life, at least one person in their life, that's going to be consistently there for them. And so the mentors that we provide to young people, we have a commitment that they will have a mentor for 12 years of their lives. And so that long-term person that's going to pour into them and help them in their own earth walk, I think is such a an honor to be able to be a part of that work. So feel free to reach out to me by email if you want to learn more about it, if you want to support the work, or if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And as Teresa said, I'm not sure how much of this work we will be doing moving forward. I think I already had one cancellation, but I also do some consultation around providing trauma training. And so including historical trauma, I just had a recent cancellation for historical trauma training, and I'm not sure if that's associated with the executive orders that have been happening lately. So I'm not sure how much requests for that I'll be getting soon, in the future, but I do want to let people know about that. I think it's important for us to continue to educate one another and to increase our understanding, so that with that context, we're able to be more effective in our roles of supporting Indigenous youth and families. So yeah, thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Veronica. I'm kind of like overwhelmed, because I'm like, wow, I'm just really glad to be with you guys. I'm so happy. So selfishly, I'm like,
Oh, I think
yeah,
Teresa has a.
I'll
If you
put
don't,
this together, but what?
mind, Shannon, I did want to bring it back to Dr. King Jr. as well.
Oh, okay, all right, go ahead, and then yeah.
Say, his vision of the beloved community. He described a society where love and justice prevail, and where people of all races, backgrounds live in harmony. And although we're Indigenous peoples and this is our truth, and this is our world, we really are here for all peoples of color. We truly are. And when we speak, that is who we are speaking for and to.
Yeah, Teresa, thank you. Thank you. I think, yeah, we have that understanding that it takes the four directions, the four colors of mankind, and Veronica, you said it so beautifully, is that it's not that we think that our ancestral wisdom and our wisdom that we bring forth, or our knowledge or our experiences, is above anybody else's, but that we need to contribute it so that we can actually heal this imbalance that has happened that is not healthy. It's not, it's just, it's, if we take away all our human emotions around it, although I think that we need our heart as well as our minds, and that's part of what's missing, and that's part of what I think we bring to the boardrooms is, reminding, because there's a lot of people trying to do good work out here, but sometimes in the middle of the work, they forget. I worked on a outcomes roundtable for children, right? And they were very smart people, and they did lots of great work about measuring kind of, looking at health outcomes and that kind of thing. But, they forgot who they were. So I started bringing pictures. I'm shameless. I just started bringing pictures of my kids, and I'd make them look at them. My grandkids, when I started having grandkids, and I'd like before they can start their business, I would make everybody look at it. And I wanted them to keep in mind who they were doing this for, why they were doing this. What is it? That the work that they were, whose lives was it going to affect? And after about 6 months, I guess they got sick of looking at my pictures because they started bringing their own, right? And once they brought their own, we were in relationship, and what you said, Veronica, we create beloved community. How do we get beloved community? We create, and does it take some effort? Yes, because it means that I have to pick up the phone or text or email and say, I'm having a hard time. I don't know where my place is right now. Or I'm working with people who just don't understand me, and I just need somebody to talk to that kind of will just listen to me. All of those things about caring for each other as good human beings and being good relatives. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Yana and Birgit for being able to have this space so that we could have this conversation. So chi miigwech bizindalig gisagian. I said thank you for listening, and to you too, I love you. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Your words have much power and wisdom, and I hear them. I hope you will all know that I want to be known as a caring relative to you. Thank you to Brigitte, our events director, and my tech assistant for today. Thank you to Shannon CrossBear, Veronica, Willeto, DeCrane, which I just realized I mispronounced earlier. I'm sorry. And Teresa Brewington for this fascinating discussion. Thank you for joining our broadcast today. Remember, please join us and take action to be of service at we.net/MLK, and donations are gratefully appreciated at we.net/donate. Goodbye from all of us at We the World.
I hope.